Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this safety roundtable session, the first one of 2024. We've had a few weeks off, and I hope everybody has drunk and eaten and been merry over the festive period. I'm just going to give a little bit of time for people to join us. Let me know in the chat if you did anything over the festive period. I went to Lapland with my family, so that was fantastic. Enjoyed the extremely cold weather, as you may have noticed if you saw my LinkedIn post yesterday, where it was as bad as -28. So that was pretty cold. So let me know what you were up to um, in uh, in the break. I'm just going to check that everything's working. It seems to be, and I'm going to just give another little short period of time for people to join before we get underway properly. What have we got here in the chat? Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Yeah, Happy New Year, Nicola. No worries. No worries, Nicola. You can you can eat your lunch with your camera off. That's perfectly allowed. Don't worry about that. Okay. Okay, let's get started. So thanks for joining this session today. I will keep letting people in as they join the Zoom. If you're watching us somewhere or other, whether it be on LinkedIn or Facebook or X, wherever you might be seeing this and you want to come and join us, then head over to safetyroundtable.co.uk. The link is in the description that you will be seeing wherever you are. So we're going to talk about priorities for 2024 today, which is obviously a topical subject for us to cover since we're at the start of January. And we did this session last year, which was really engaging, really interesting, and got some great feedback from it. So I thought I would run it again. Just quickly, if you haven't been to one of these sessions before, this is the Safety Roundtable. It's a fortnightly interactive Zoom session where I will either introduce a topic like I'm going to today, or I'll bring in a guest to introduce a topic between us for a period of time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. And then we open it up to the participants. So it's very much interactive. I'm going to be asking you to today to share your priorities for the year. And if you want to ask a question, feel free to pop it into the chat, or you can go to reactions. If you're on the Zoom, you can go to reactions, raise your hand, and ask a question that way as well. And do feel free to invite colleagues and anyone else you think might be interested to come along to one of these sessions to join us, because it's always good fun. Another thing quickly that might help you to crystallize your priorities for the year is to take our Safety Champion quiz. So we've created this little online quiz. You answer a few questions. It takes about 3 or 4 minutes, totally free, and it'll tell you what kind of safety champion you are. And depending on how you answer, you'll get some recommendations of areas to focus on to improve as well. You can find that at safetychampion.scoreapp.com. So we're here to talk about 2024. So I thought I'd start by giving a bit of an overview of the landscape as things stand at the moment. And I listened to a great podcast on rebranding safety with James McPherson and Peter Jenkins, and they were talking about this. I attended a fantastic 2-day conference late last year with safety leaders from all around the world, including people from IOSH, IRSM, Canada, US, etc. And we were talking about this as well, which is thinking about trends. And broadly speaking, the safety trends are kind of flat like a pancake in many respects. And so this is a good context to consider what do we need to prioritize on if we want to make a meaningful impact to try to improve that. So I've got a few bits of data here from the UK HSE annual statistics, because I figure most of us here are from the UK, and this would be good context for us. So the first thing is work-related ill health. So 1.8 million workers suffering from work-related ill health in 22/23, 672,000 suffering from a new case of work-related ill health in 22/23, 31.5 million working days lost due to work-related ill health. And if you look at the trend line for this, it is broadly flat as a pancake, certainly over the last 5 to 7 years. Interestingly, though, HSE is perhaps expecting an uplift in this over the coming few years. 49% of this category, by the way, is stress, depression, or anxiety, 27% musculoskeletal, and 24% other types of illness. Any thoughts on this data? Let us know. Any insights you've got, any experiences, let us know in the chat. But this is the first piece of context I wanted to share. Secondly, here's some data about workplace injury. So 135 workers killed in work-related accidents, 561,000 workers who sustained a non-fatal workplace injury. Of this category, slips, trips and falls on the same level, 32%. That percentage has been very, very flat for the last over 10 years, as I often speak about. And you can see here, look, very, very flat. There was a decrease in the early 2000s, but very, very flat for the last 10 years. Work-related stress, depression, or anxiety. This is one area where we are seeing a slight increase. It's flat, but it's a slightly increasing flat. So not shooting up dramatically, but there is an increase. So as we said earlier, 875,000 workers suffering from work-related stress, depression, or anxiety, which is 49% of the total. 17.1 million working days lost. And HSE is expecting this to increase over coming years. So this certainly is an area that I imagine we would all want to think about prioritising in the coming year, or say the coming year. We're in the year now, so in the year that we are in. And how about the costs? So Happy New Year, Kendall, on LinkedIn, by the way. Thank you for joining. What about the costs? So the costs have been very, very flat, but again, HSE is looking to the costs potentially increasing over coming years. 20.7 billion cost they estimate, of which 63% is ill health, 37% injuries, and they're suggesting that 12.2 billion pounds of these costs are borne by individuals, 3.9 billion by employers, and 4.6 billion by government. Now, if anything, I think that's an underestimate. If you just look at insurance claim costs, for example, we work with AXA, and AXA shared data from 2018 that they spent 80 million pounds in that year of claims on slips alone. Manual handling was about 35 million, I think, 25, 35 million. If you extrapolate that we get to 1.5 to 2 billion just of slip insurance claim costs. So I don't know where that would fit within the HSE's chart that they've got here in the splits. But if we're saying that there's potentially 1.5 billion of slip insurance claim costs alone, and HSE is saying the total bill for employers is only 3.9 billion, then something is going amiss slightly there. It might be that the insurance costs are covered within individuals. I should ask that question to people at HSE and see where they're getting this data from. But again, broadly flat costs, but potentially increasing. And I guess that's in line with the mental health costs, which are expected to go up. So that's a bit of context. Some big problems, some large costs, some significant numbers of people being injured, whether that be mentally or physically in the workplace. And I'm going to share with you 5 ways that we could respond to this, 5 potential priorities that we could put into place as a result of that context. And then what I'd love is for you to give me your feedback on these. Which of these do you think you might be looking to prioritize in the year ahead, or have you got other plans to prioritize? So I'm going to share these 5 suggestions, and then we'll open it up and get the discussion going. So the first thing that I think we need to be prioritizing is proactivity, being more proactive. In the context of that broadly flat data set, we need to be mindful that it's very easy to sort of lapse into accepting that level of harm. And whilst we've talked before about zero harm being unachievable in a practical sense, I'm absolutely sure that we can make a big dent in the data compared to where we are. But that requires us to be proactive and take some steps to do things differently to address some of these issues. So that's the first thing that I would suggest people consider, is being a bit more proactive. The second thing I think we need to do as a safety community is focus on engagement and communications. I think often we still suffer from the stigma of being the health and safety police, being the kind of island of one, not working in collaboration with other stakeholders in the business. So I think we've got to really work on how we engage with others and how we communicate the value that we bring, and that will bring other people within our organizations all along the journey with us. So I think that's a really key area that we should be focusing on, these kind of softer skills. The third thing is a concept that I call safetynomics, and I've shared a little bit about this. I'm planning to do more this year on this topic. The principle of this basically is that safety drives business performance, and it's about intrinsically linking safety to how an organization delivers on its goals. Because safety is never going to be the number one priority of a business, but it should be intrinsically linked to everything that we do as organizations. And I believe that we can make a very powerful case to boards, to CEOs, to investors, to be more proactive, to be better, to invest more in safety, if we can work together to link clearly and quantifiably business outcomes to safety. So that's a priority that I think we should be thinking about, trying to work on this, because that will unlock funding, support, resources that we can use to drive down incident rates and harm. The fourth topic I'd like to put out there is being open-minded and being empathetic. Now, we are empathetic as a profession. I don't think you'd work in health and safety if you didn't have empathy and you didn't want to keep other people safe. But I think where I'm going with this is not so much about trying to understand the fact that other people aren't deliberately going to work or going out on their leisure time to get hurt, but it's about linking this with the communication and engagement piece, really understanding what key stakeholders in our organizations are seeking to achieve, and really trying to empathize with that, and then positioning ourselves as enablers to help them. And then the open-mindedness piece, I think, is about, again, with that context of data being broadly flat for the last 10, 15 or so years. I did a series of polls recently on LinkedIn, where I asked, how often, when you start a new safety role, do you find things that could be improved? And I'm pretty sure I put the options as always, often, rarely, or never. And overwhelmingly, people voted always. Now, what conclusion can we draw from that? The conclusion we can draw is that if we're going into a new role, there's a very, very strong chance that we're going to find things that could be improved. But the same can be said for if we leave our role and someone else steps into it, they're going to be finding things that can be improved as well. So I'd encourage everyone to be open-minded, to take a second look at things, to not rest on our laurels. I feel as if we often will say, yeah, we're okay in this area or we're okay in that area. But are we really? Have we looked in the mirror? Can we be a little bit more open-minded about potential that there are areas that we could improve? And I guess following on from that, the fifth thing I wanted to share was underpinning foundations. So if we just think about the injury piece here, slips, trips, and falls was 32%. It's broadly between 30 and 33% year after year after year. Then you've got things like manual handling, which makes up perhaps another 20%. So half of our incidents from a safety perspective are down to a couple of key causes. Now, how often, if we're sitting here and putting our hands on our hearts, how often have we reviewed in the last 2 years these areas, these high frequency, potentially perceived as low risk areas, slips, trips, falls, manual handling, just in particular? How often have we really done a root and branch review of these to really underpin the foundations on which we're seeking to build our safety houses, to use an analogy? I feel like, and my experience is, the answer is not that often. And so I'd really encourage you to go away and just think about the fact that if you are having these higher frequency, but potentially lower risk from the perspective of, serious harm is less likely, incidents happening, isn't it worth just reviewing them again and just thinking, what else could we do? Being open-minded. What else could we do? What could we do differently? What could we do better in these areas just to underpin these foundations? Because it's all great and well and good to have these discussions and debates about, safety one, safety two, safety differently, HOP, and all of this stuff. And that's great and really interesting. But actually, if we can't get these foundations right, then are we really in a position to have a platform to have these kinds of discussions and to really push things on to a more advanced place? My sense is probably not. Okay, just have a look in the chat. So those are the 5 things that I was keen to share. So what I'd love to do now is open this up. Go to reactions, raise your hand. Let me know, are you interested in prioritizing one of these 5 areas that I've highlighted? Or is there something else that you're planning to focus on this year? It'd be great to just share what you were planning to work on, where you're going to be prioritizing your time and effort, and see if we can have some discussions around that. So keen to see if anybody's going to volunteer, or do I have to choose somebody? um, there's lots going on in the chat, so people are definitely keen to talk. But we might need to. I might need to volunteer somebody. Who should I volunteer? Unless somebody wants to be brave. Joanne. Joanne's saying she's in an office with no video and listening only. Likely story.
I'm happy to offer some thoughts if you like, Christian.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Richard. Let me stop sharing. How are you? Firstly, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Busy as ever, which is good. Better than getting stressed by sitting around waiting for things to happen. Which is, I
Yes.
think, something that people tend to forget sometimes, that underwork can actually create problems for people as well. Obviously, we
Yeah.
have to balance workload and demand. From our perspective, we're looking at most of the elements that you put up out there from those five, with regards to the safety initiative and the work with foundries, especially around engagement and proactivity, targeting at senior manager levels, because there's still at times a lack of understanding of people's roles and responsibilities
Yeah.
and what it actually means for them to be at the top. And this is without specifically talking technical clauses and sections within legislation, just the bigger overview of what it means to be in charge and what it means to look after other people.
Yeah.
So that's an area that we do need to work on. Slips. I'm just started my stats gathering for 2023. I know slips, trips, and falls will be probably within the top 5 or 6. They usually are. Likewise, manual handling.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is all these days is to do with how people are handling loads. So trapping fingers, dropping items on when setting things down, as opposed to the initial lift and shift. From that point of view, and the HSE are very much looking at our industry in terms of silica and other sort of toxic fumes. So again, we're doing a lot of work and engagement with leaders and management on that around health surveillance and motivation. And we want to get back into doing more work again with the HSE, following up on some pilot work we did for them on mental health and work-related stress. So
Yeah.
quite a broad span, really.
Mm.
One of the things I'm trying to look at is flipping things around a little bit, so that instead of always talking technical legislation, trying to get the message across to people that if we did morally what we should be doing, we'd probably need a heck of a lot less legislation. So
Yeah.
should we need to have regulations that tell people you've got to provide toilets and washing facilities and rest facilities, when we all know at home we have these facilities? We all teach our children about that kind of stuff as they're growing up, and washing your hands after going to the toilet and everything else of that nature. And then we see the HSE issuing enforcement across a whole range of sectors on a regular basis, because then we then fail as business leaders to provide those facilities for the people who are really making us the money.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, very interesting. I had Simon Cassin on the podcast just before Christmas, and there's going to be another episode with him coming up, sort of part 2, because it was a very, very in-depth discussion, but it was speaking about ethics within safety and how we, well, what is ethics? How is ethics applicable? Should we be focusing on ethical considerations versus legislative? All those kinds of discussions are encapsulated in that chat. So if you haven't listened to that, I think you probably enjoy it. And you obviously work. You're an industry association, aren't you, Richard? So
Yeah.
you're not sort of operating things. So from the perspective of looking at your members, do you sense that there is a alignment around kind of priorities for the year around some of those issues that you mentioned, particularly, I suppose, the silica piece, if HC are focusing on it, but, or do people have sort of different attitudes, and are you trying to sort of bring people together to focus in one kind of sense?
We the safety initiative tries to elevate everybody upwards and share best knowledge, best practice, to try and help people find solutions to issues they may have that are widely used by the industry.
Mhm.
But yes, we're acutely aware that everybody's got problems with energy in terms of cost, business costs, and everything else of the sort. But we need to try and get to a bigger picture of getting rid of this. But we've always done it this way terminology, which is one of the things you get with foundation industries and sort of processes that are sort of eons old, to be quite honest. So we've got to try and bring it into more into the 21st century, because our industry, like many, has problems recruiting people, it has problems retaining people. And if part of the problem isn't just the financial payment to people, but what are the facilities like after they've seen a brilliant website and then they go and work somewhere and it looks like it's something from Lord of the Rings, then what are we doing to change the leadership within those businesses so that people will want to come to them? Because it's all about the first impressions. For every business that somebody looks at online and they see a report from the HSE or they see criticisms of it on social media from ex-employees, etc., people aren't going to want to go and work for it. But then the wider public gets this perception that the entire industry is like that. So then it's how do we get the rest of the industry itself to start and call out some of these people and say, you can't get people in because of how you run your facility, but how you run your facility is how everybody in the world thinks I run my facility, and then I can't get people in. So I think ethics, ethos, and has to be tied back in more to, if we did all of this right, we might need less legislation. If we did all of this right, we might not have the intervention from the HSE. And I think that COVID seems to have changed a lot of things for people as well. Everybody's very much, I think at times, the sense of teamwork and sort of company spirit seems to have gone as well. We will all see the same thing every day when we're driving on the roads at the moment. There's a lot more aggressive behaviour around, and everybody thinking that they should have the exact space they want at the second they want it. And we need to change the whole way of which we're talking, rather than just keep beating people up with a particular clause of a particular piece of legislation. We need to be giving them all the reasons why we should be doing the right things by our own people, because it's what we would want them to do for us.
No, I like that. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for sharing and being brave to break the silence, because it always takes somebody.
Somebody had to, and if it raises some discussion points and gives different thoughts and a wide range of thoughts from other people, then that's the whole point of a roundtable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. I was thinking I might pick on Andy to come up, because Andy raised a point in the chat about, do we just accept that 140 people will die each year due to work activities, and that's prompted quite a big discussion. Are you up for coming on, Andy, and chatting about that a bit?
Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Sorry for that.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. How you doing?
Okay. Yeah, good, man. I'm doing good, man. For the topic that we are discussing, is the ninth thing that we are discussing on the table, that what are our priorities for 2024?
Yeah.
Yeah. My recent company that I joined in Ghana, I started working with them on October. So basically, I just done my round checks. When I joined, they were not having adequate health and safety management system in place. So I have to start everything from grassroots. So I got to know that the attitude towards safety, health and safety, it is poor. So that is my focal point, that I'm trying to put certain things in place about, even when it comes to permitting system and having the reporting system of health and safety documentation and other stuff before they start works. It was a challenge for them. So people were criticizing that things that it is not there. I'm trying to introduce it. I said, look, German, the thing is there, but you've not gotten someone who will try to initiate it. So that is why I'm here. So I'm trying to, previously the incidents that are there and the accidents that they have recorded. We see that when I sat down to check everything, I got to know that the attitude towards safety was very, very poor. So basically now 2024, my my priorities is going to be on the attitude.
Yeah.
Attitude in terms of the permitting aspect, and then all the necessary things that they have to put in place before any commencement of the assigned task, and then so all the safety, the next system that we have to put in place to, bring down, if you are able to achieve 0% for the year 2024, I'll be happy for incident aspect. So I'm trying to put certain things in place, both administrative wise and then field wise, so that we'll be able to, I'll be able to achieve my target since I'm the leader in charge of health and safety department. So that is what I'm busy working on. So I have to try all my best to, put all the documents that are not in place, so that I'll be able to catch up. And then if I do recall, the slip and trip as you are talking about, all these things used to happen, especially in the constructional site. My place, you could see some, as I'm saying, the attitude. You see, someone will just put something that will trip him on the busy working area, instead of him to feel easy to put it in the right way. So all bottom bounds to the attitude at the workplace. So we have to do something about it. I don't know other side, but that is my side for things that I've observed. So I am trying to do something in place so that we'll be able to, correct all things that we need to correct to achieve our zero harm. So that's what I'm basically busy on, trying to put this in place. Thank you. So I'll come back.
Good stuff. No, thanks for that. And I think the attitude piece that you've raised is kind of aligned to what I was talking about around empathy, I suppose, as well as the communications piece. Because I think if you're finding that people are not interested in safety, to be blunt, what we need to do is, rather than, in my opinion, rather than just kind of hitting them around the head with a big stick, kind of like what Richard was saying, as well with legislation, we need to try and understand why they believe that it's not important, what's driving them instead, and actually what can we do to get their worldview to align with ours, because we're just trying to keep them safe, right? We're trying to help them, but if they don't want to help themselves, we need to try and really understand and empathize with them to figure out why it is that they're acting and thinking in that way, and see what we can do to influence and persuade them to do things differently and more in line with what we kind of perceive is going to be a safer way to do it, because it is in their interest, isn't it? But sometimes people don't always act in their own best interests. Interestingly.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. Does anybody else want to come up and share what they're planning to work on? I can see there's lots going on in the chat on the Zoom here, so there's people are definitely got some good thoughts. Does anybody else want to come up and share? In the meantime, whilst people are considering whether to do that, I will share that the next safety roundtable in 2 weeks' time is going to be really fun, because Peter Jenkins, who you may have come across before, is going to be joining me. I've done a couple of webinars with Peter before, but we've never done just the two of us on one ourselves. And we're going to be talking about some work that Peter's been doing around simplification, digitization, and automation of safety management systems. So digital safety management systems 101. So that's what we'll be touching on, get my words out, in a couple of weeks' time on the 24th of January at 12:30 p.m. So do join us for that. which will be a good session. If you're looking for it online to register on LinkedIn, it isn't there yet, but it'll be up tomorrow as of the live showing of today's session. This will be published as a LinkedIn event tomorrow, but it is once you've registered for the Safety Roundtable once on Zoom, then you can join any of the events, so you don't need to register again. Well, look, I've enjoyed talking about my thoughts on priorities for the year, and thanks for the large amount of stuff going on in the chat. But it sounds like, or it feels like, people are not too keen to come and talk today. So on that basis, we will start wrapping things up. Do keep the conversation going on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and all of that good stuff. And do join us for the next roundtable in a couple of weeks with Peter Jenkins, and look forward to